When you observe what you're saying and then you look at it again and take one more step back and look at it again and take one more step back, and it's just playing with ego, and then finally they're like, yeah, that's not my voice. Hi everyone, our very special guest today is Char Tamason. Char is a PhD in public health, a therapist and an intuitive healer.
I would ask that my clients' higher self, their connection, their spirit come through, and that I hold this channel so that they can begin to feel, hear, sense, see how their intuition is coming through for them.
Char and I will have a conversation based on our personal experience and our professional experience as therapists on how to connect or tune into our intuition to live a more authentic life. Before we get into this nourishing conversation, I'd like to invite you to subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss any of our videos. Hi Char.
Hi Olga, thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining. Like I was saying, I'm really excited about this topic. It's something like when you and I were like, chatting on WhatsApp, and when we were like leaving each other messages to decide what was the topic that we were going to work on, I was telling you as well that intuition has been one of those things that has really made a big difference in how I've understood my own process in healing, and how I understand what people that come to me are going through. So I'm really happy that we get to talk about that today.
Yeah, absolutely, me too. It was literally a life changer for me. And yeah, the messages, there was flow. And to me, that's a sign that we're in touch with our intuition, right? When it's just like, ooh, this feels good. Ooh, this keeps feeling good. Oh, yes, I'm in this flow state. That's when I know that I'm connected. And as long as I stay with it, I know everything's going to be good.
Absolutely. So before we get into the topic itself, you already told me a little bit, but for the people that have joined today and will in the future watch this video, maybe you tell us a little bit about how is it that you go from getting as far as getting a PhD in public health and then decide to follow a path of working as a therapist, integrating energy work as an intuitive healer?
Yeah. That's a good question. And the short answer is that my intuition made me. I felt like I didn't have a choice. And I just want to make one little tweak there. And I generally don't use the word therapist.
Okay.
Sometimes I say that what I offer is like a soul-guided therapy. But because I don't have a technical certification in therapy, I kind of try to avoid that word. And that might be the American in me, like shying away from like credentials that I could get in trouble for not having. Yeah, so my story is that I was very, very left brain focused. I like to joke that I had a type AAA personality, because it was type A and beyond, where I wanted to get up, I wanted to produce, I wanted to do. My self-worth, my ego was very based on my intellect. I'd gotten lots of good feedback over the years, and so I just kept going forward down that academic route. And, I had some moments where I'd connected with some, complementary alternative energy healers, and I felt like that had helped me personally, but I kept down the academia route because I didn't believe that I could do it myself. I didn't have faith in myself at the time, until finally I reached this point in the PhD where it was like everything was going wrong. Like political unrest, natural disasters, visa and travel issues, like you name it, it felt like our project was cursed. And shortly thereafter, I got sick. My anxiety levels were through the roof as it was. And then I got to the point where I had this mysterious nerve pain and I couldn't get out of bed. And that was really what I felt was my energy, my spirit telling me, like, you cannot continue walking down this path. And quite literally, the nerve pain was in my right leg, which is that leg that I step forward with. And I was like, stop right there. So it was while I was in bed, in pain, not able to move, that I stumbled upon a course in energy healing and energy training. And immediately when I started, I did the master class, I believe, and I think my pain levels went from like a 9 out of a 10 to maybe a 4 or 5 out of 10 within, 20 minutes. And so I signed up for the course immediately. I dove into it and I was like, okay, this is it. I'm finally ready to listen, universe. I promise that as soon as I finish this PhD, I will dedicate my life to healing myself and others. And from that moment on, everything got easier. Everything got easier. And when I thought like, oh, this is so much easier, like maybe I could think about doing a little bit of this in academia, I would end up in bed again with nerve pain. So it was like that reminder of, this is not the path for you. This is not in line with your heart, your intuition, your spirit, any of those things. So then I did studies, I listened to webinar after webinar, I found some wonderful teachers, spiritual teachers, life coaches that helped me on this path, and finally I sort of got up the courage to begin charging people for it. I don't know about you, but like I went through that period of like, oh, I can help people, but can I actually ask for money for this? Like, am I there yet? So once I got over that, I opened my business, Health by Intuition, and that's what I do now. I help bring more health into people's lives. Health to me is a balance in mind, body, and spirit, by helping them connect with their intuition.
How many years ago was that? How long have you been doing this work?
I've been doing this work and getting paid for it for about 3 years. I've been doing this work and not getting paid for it for probably 6, 7, something like that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So there was a gap between like feeling like you could charge for your work.
Yes, big time. I had sort of that complex that I think a lot of healers go through of like, how can I help someone else if I'm not totally healed myself? And once I accepted and realized that that's bogus, I was able to start helping other people and actually help myself a lot more too.
Yeah, I think every single, like even like formal therapists will go through that thought of where they think that they need to be like perfect first before helping people. But then I think that particularly when you get into the path of connecting with all the spiritual energy work, you become even more aware that's ridiculous and impossible to think about the fact of being completely healed, because life is about that, life is about walking the path where step by step you get to know more of that energy that you are, and then you'll find a new piece of information. It never ends.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know, Char, I can identify with you a lot with that feeling of getting to a point in your life where it's not even about thinking anymore, but it's just like this gut feeling. It's like your body pushing you to do something else. Your body, your gut, there's many ways to explain to do something else. Otherwise, you start feeling like you're dying inside a little bit, almost feels like that. And I know that because it's something that you experience more in a physical way, I would say, it's hard to put words to it. But if I were to ask you, what would be the words? And the reason why I'm asking this question is the following. So what I was going to say is, if you could put words of what were the things that you said to yourself, or what were the things that happened, or that you in the practice did every day to keep on going in that path, what were those? Because, and why am I asking this? A lot of people that come to me feel so inspired and so connected with this idea that they can allow themselves to listen to their intuition, that there is a better plan for them, that feeling that they're having of not wanting to do anymore, that what they do is not being lazy or being stubborn, it's actually real guidance. And they love it. And then we're done with a session and they're like, oh my God, yay. But then I see them again and they're like, it sounded so great when I was with you, but now I don't know how to do it. Like, you know, they go back to their normal lives and they start thinking that they're crazy, that that's absurd, that that's, just like witches stuff or things like that. You know what I'm trying to say? And then like bringing it into the material world, into the way in which they actually start making decisions becomes very challenging because the ego is all the time saying, what's this intuition thing? No, let's go with facts. So again, I know this is something that we just allow ourselves to guide us, but if you were to put words, what would you say were things that helped you actually make the transition? Besides the fact that you were observing, like being a witness of your body getting better.
There were so many things and so many signs, and there are about 100 things that came up that came in for me as you were talking. So to begin with, I would say I remember just feeling like, because I felt so bad, I remember feeling like, okay, there are certain things that I need to do. There are very few things that make me feel really good right now in my daily life. So I need to make sure I do these. One of those things was meditation. So I was meditating every day, which is ironic, like, because during a time when you're going through things that are really challenging, lots of anxiety and physical pain, to connect into meditation feels almost impossible. But I still gave myself that time to do that because I knew that when I finished, I would feel better. So that for me was that one thing. And another thing that came through was really listening to advice from people that I trusted. And one was an intuitive seer that I began seeing when I was working on my research. And she said, you have a healing energy. And those words just spoke so true to me. She's like, you are on the wrong life path. And it was just like, boom, I looked back at my life and thought of, you know, when I was little, I wanted to be a doctor. When I started college, I decided, like, I thought I might go down a medical track. Then I wasn't so sure because I didn't really like conventional medicine, but I just went through all of these things. I was like, yes, my whole life, that's all I wanted to do. I wanted to help people to feel better, to help them feel healthy and good and balanced. So that finding that inspiration, you know, that bit of purpose behind things, that really helped me also. What else helped me move forward? I think just that awareness and admitting where I was and how poorly I felt. And listening to some of those reflections from friends, you know, once I finally realized, you know, these people are coming up to me and being like, are you okay? You know, sometimes when you feel like you're kind of at a rock bottom, you don't hear that. You don't recognize that. And then all of a sudden one day you do. And you're like, okay, I'm ready. I need to get help with this. And so for me, it was really a mix. It was the intuitive side. It was following what felt good and what for me alleviated pain. You know, that was the path that I was following at that time. So it was the energy work. It was eating well, and I also began seeing a trained psychologist too. You know, to help with the mind because that was a big issue at the time. And then along the path, it was just learning how my intuition spoke to me. And even now, as I continue down this path and I teach others about intuition, I would say like every few months, I realize, oh my gosh, this is another way that my intuition is speaking to me.
Mm-hmm.
Through the mouths of others, through like rustling in the wind, through things that keep popping up on television. To me, intuition really speaks in repetition. In fact, it speaks repetition to everyone. Those intuitive messages are going to keep coming through for you if they're going to help you. And so just beginning to recognize, like, okay, this is the third person that's asked me about this thing, and they have, no connection. So it's time for me to ask myself that question and really listen to the answer that wants to come through.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that also kind of connects you with the idea of oneness, right? When you truly accept that there can't really be like divisions in energy and that we're somehow connected, you can trust that someone else telling you something, or even a Facebook post that's repeated, it's that voice that's wanting to talk to you because we're connected that way. But people still sometimes feel like that's just wanting to be, I don't know, believing naive. Like, oh, you're believing some sort of like kind of fairy tale magic. But it could be actually very powerful, what you're getting. But I think it's really hard for people to trust because we've been trained, like we were talking on the phone the other day, or I think it was messages that we had. We've been trained to listen only to things that can be like checked by facts, like theory, like what's written on traditional books. And then, so what I was thinking, that could be one, like something that could be useful for the people that are watching us and that will be watching us is, and I told you that I wanted to ask a little bit about this, is maybe if you describe a little bit, how does it happen? What are the steps that you go through when a client comes to you and you help open up that space for them to start connecting with that inner voice or to become channels of their own higher self? What does that look like?
Yeah, it looks beautiful. That's what it looks like. And with me, what I do is I ask to be a channel in a session. And so I would ask that my clients' higher self, their connection, their spirit come through, and that I hold this channel so that they can begin to feel, hear, sense, see how their intuition is coming through for them. And it's different every single time. It's different between different people. It's different from day to day in different sessions. And some people, I connect them in, I lead them through this connection through their body, and all of a sudden they're on sort of like this psychedelic journey. Those are kind of like one extreme. Another extreme is someone that, it hurts me to say it, but this is how I look at it. It's almost like somebody that's had the intuition beaten out of them. And I would say I was at that point also. So that's how it felt to me, And so they're getting messages that come through. I know they are because I get messages intuitively in my body to guide them, specifically when they're dealing with something unconscious. So when I'm not feeling, sensing, seeing anything, I know that they are. And then it's my job to ask the right questions so that they can sense how that's coming in. For some people, it's very visual. They see themselves, walking down a path, interacting, maybe floating in a body of water. And then, that can bring that peace, that feeling of, that great connection, letting go. For other people, we've connected in, and all of a sudden it's like a voice turns on in their head. They can hear words. Some people can even hear sentences, of just this guidance coming through. And then there are people like me who are more clairsentient and claircognizant. What do I mean by that? It means that they're clear feeling and clear knowing. And this for me was a really tricky, strongest intuitive sense to have, because I didn't, it's something that I've had my entire life, but I had no idea that it was trying to help me or give me clues, set me on the right path. It just kind of felt like a curse, or it didn't feel, it felt insignificant. So beginning to decipher is like learning new language, learning the language of my body sensations, and of when something comes into my head, beginning to recognize, okay, this is intuition versus this is the mind. And I'll share a tip right now with everybody that really helps for this. If you ask a question that you want the answer to, and I'd recommend doing this after, taking some deep breaths and kind of feeling into your body and just really getting in that space where you're like, okay, I'm ready to receive this guidance. You ask your question, and the first answer that pops in, usually within the first 3 seconds, that's going to be your intuition. If something comes after that, especially if it's something contradictory, that's your psyche, or that's the mind. Mm-hmm. And then another tip that I like to share is that when your intuition is coming in, it always feels supportive and loving. Like it's gentle. It will never insult you. If you hear something like, oh, you're blah, 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 that's not your intuition. Mm-hmm. So you can say, no, thank you. That might be the voice of a parent. It might be the voice of who knows what, but it's not your intuition. So you can dismiss that and ask for that intuitive voice to come in.
I love that you're saying that, Char, because having someone else say that in our channel, I think it's going to help a lot the people that have been part of our community, because I think that when you're doubting about actually deciding if that was your mind or your intuition, it helps a lot when someone else says, yes, it is your intuition. You made me think of this client that I recently saw, and she was saying, I keep on having this feeling that I want to start this business. And she describes it to me, and when she starts, so she's going through this moment in her life where she's like in not a very great spot, and she's like having a hard time making a decision, or like where does she want to live, if she wants to go to school or apply for a new job. But the one thing that keeps on coming, it's that idea for that business that she wants to start. Mm-hmm. And when she talks about it, she feels like you just described, she feels supportive about herself. She feels excited, she feels determined, but then she goes out and has conversations about what are the ideas that she has about this business, and people will be like, oh, that's interesting, or that sounds really new, and she gets completely discouraged. And then she'll come back to me and she's like, but look at this person that has been so successful in their lives and is saying that this idea that I have sounds like kind of weird. And I'm like, but your intuition, it's clearly telling you that it's a really good idea, because even your facial expression changes so much when you talk to me about it. And I know that she's starting to connect with the fact, I say this is not an idea anymore, it's the fact that this is her intuition talking to her. But then, like I was saying, when people go out there in the world and then they hear the mainstream way of thinking, then they're like, oh, maybe that was not really my intuition. Maybe I'm just being silly and maybe I should not do this. So it's so nice. And that's why I was telling you thank you, because it's so helpful to have more and more people that somehow dare to come out in the public and say intuition exists. Yes, you can listen to it. And yes, it's loving. And it might be subtle sometimes. And
it's often subtle. right? You have to learn how to listen. And like you said, it's repetitive. It keeps coming back. It's not going to just show up once and then when you need it, it's not going to be there. Like it will keep pushing you over and over and over until you follow it. In a loving way.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Have you had people that have come to you where they've had so much resistance where they can't allow themselves to channel?
Yes and no. I've had people come to me where they've had so much resistance that they didn't believe that they were receiving messages, but they still felt better after a session. And so they came back. And that to me is intuition also, you know, you're just following what feels good and it keeps bringing things that feel good. That was something I had to get over early on too, of like, I used to have a belief like I have to pay for things. Like, you know, if I want something to feel good, I got to pay for it later. Once I finally got over that, it was like, oof, I could really start living and following the intuition. So anyway, back to your question. I've had people that didn't think they could follow or that were unsure about what they were seeing or shy. They were afraid to tell me what they were seeing, what they were experiencing. But they did just a little bit in the first session. And then in the second session, a lot more came. And then in the third session, a ton more came. And that's enough just to get it flowing. And then I had one other person. This was earlier on. I definitely learned from this experience, but we went in and she kept falling asleep. Yeah. So what I now know, I knew it at the time that she was hitting a lot of unconscious energy. And when we hit unconscious energy, sometimes either we don't notice it, we don't feel it, or we just kind of go into the state that I call sleepitation. You know, where you're like kind of awake but not really there, almost like on another plane. And so I know now what to do when somebody gets in that state. I know that I need to step in and take charge and ask to help clear this unconscious energy. But at the time, it's a balance, right? I know sometimes I need to go in and ask to clear this and ask to clear it, of course, with people's permission. But when you are in that unconscious state, you're still healing. You go there to, I don't know how to describe it in a way that makes any sense logically, but it's almost like you go there to shut your mind off so things can just begin to flow better. And this is my experience. And guys, I know this might sound nuts to those of you that, you know, work with very logical, rational ways of working. And this is what I thought too many years ago, until I felt it, until I experienced it. And that's what I go with now is experience. And so people can doubt, people cannot understand, and that's okay, because for me, this feels great, and it continues to bring me more and more feelings of joy and goodness, and I notice how much it can help other people. Like I watch that, I know that, and so I keep doing it, and it keeps getting crazier.
Oh yeah.
Some of my experiences, but then I keep feeling great, so I keep doing it.
Yeah, I was asking because this is something that has happened a lot to me, and I guess and it works anyways, but it's interesting. I kind of wanted so that people can have or listen to different ways of still getting closer to that intuition. But what I've done with people that have a lot of resistance is that I step a little bit back from trying to connect with the intuition, and then I start working with ego. Like I go back to being just a therapist and have conversations about what are the beliefs that are like repeating to help people see themselves stepping into something that when they look from further away doesn't make sense anymore. I don't know if I'm being clear with what I'm saying. You know, it's like when you observe what you're saying and then you look at it again and take one more step back and look at it again and take one more step back, and it's just playing with ego, and then finally they're like, yeah, that's not my voice. But it takes, you know, it takes, and then sometimes I wonder, it's like, oh, there could be an easier way. But sometimes I feel that with certain people, it's got to be done like that, because in those first sessions, keeping the conversation around energy could create like more resistance. But then they still want to be there, you know?
Yeah. And I think you provide a service that to a population that doesn't come to me, you know, because the people that come to me, they identify as being spiritual. Mm-hmm. You know, they read those words of like listening to your inner voice and letting that empower you, and that's like, okay, go. Whereas you are bridging the gap, you know. And it's so necessary, like, to have both of these perspectives and both of these roles in the world, because you need to meet people where they are. And I think we both meet people in different places, which is so important because people are everywhere.
Mm-hmm. The interesting thing, though, is that I would say probably 80% of the people that come to me do describe themselves as spiritual people. But I think it's still a very early stage. And I always say this doesn't mean that it's better or worse. There's just stages in this process. But there's the stage in which they are is still very mental, which we all go through that, you know. Like even myself, those first moments in my life where I was like, oh, okay, this is very clear to me that this is how things work. It still was very mental. Like I think I had not practiced yet how that new set of beliefs looked when I would go out and live my life. And this is what happens to some of these people, is that they now are like convinced, not because I've convinced them, they already come like that, but then getting to that, like you said, it's perfect. It's like walking the bridge to like, okay, but now how does this apply in, for example, making decisions in my life is what's like kind of hard. So my next question to you would be, besides, and I know these things, you know, should happen natural, you know, intuitively. But besides meditating, what would be one extra thing that people could do to help themselves take more steps in that bridge of saying like, okay, I can live my life based on this?
Yeah. I'm going to say two things. One is really simple, and it's just intention. You know, speak it out loud, write it down, and say, I intend to connect with my intuition. And then just by doing that, by making that statement, you set your energy that way. And you might have to keep repeating this statement. So like, be prepared, like maybe put it as a phone reminder of like, I intend to grow a stronger relationship with my intuition. Because these declarations, they have a lot of power, but, you know, like we talked about already in this call, you can be led astray by patterns, by old beliefs, by people saying, oh, this won't work, or, you know, giving you one of these looks. So, you know, just repeatedly setting that intention, you know, once a week, this is my intention. You don't need to do anything on how or what or when or why, just that intention. it will take you there. It will take you there. Assuming you start listening and actually begin to go, but it will. And then the other thing, setting the intention and asking for help. And this is going to get real spiritual here. Asking for help to whomever or whatever you believe in. You can even ask yourself for help. Like, let's say you identify as atheist or agnostic or don't know whom to ask. But if you're religious, you could ask God. If you're spiritual, you could ask a higher power. You could ask the universe. And you just ask, please help me connect more with my intuition. Help me to distinguish between my intuition and my mind. Help me to live more authentically following my intuition. And the more you ask, the more you receive. It's that simple.
That last thing that you said connects me right away with this exercise that I have some of my clients do. And is that, because a lot of the times, even though they go through all this resistance and doubts and, question all these things a ton, but at the same time, they are ready to start listening to something inside, because also it feels like the information outside, and more now, especially in this last year and a half, information out can be so contradictory or so confusing that they're at least ready to give a try to something else that's inside and not outside. So what I tell them, actually, particularly when they don't believe in anything specifically, is that I ask them to find a photo of themselves, and if not, take one, where they felt the most happy with themselves. Like a photo that reminds them of having special achievements or a moment in their lives where they were really healthy and with lots of energy. And then I ask them to frame that photo and build like an altar with like candles or flowers or whatever they like, and to come and talk to that photo every day and ask to that person in the photo for guidance. And I always say,
beautiful.
And I always say, don't question, don't let your mind tell you like, oh, really? Like you're praying to yourself, which actually, this is what we really should do. But it can still, like your head can tell you a lot of stories of how that's being like very immature or ridiculous. And I say, just try to be gentle about those voices and go back to that person and ask them, what should I do? And it's incredible how that helps them a lot to get empowered into building, like it starts the path into building more of that self-esteem that's so much needed to be able to get into this way of living life, Yeah,
definitely. I love that. That's beautiful.
It's been about 45 minutes already, Char, so I'm going to start closing. I'd like you to share with everyone where can people find you, if you have a website, if there's anything else that you would like to add, to share about this intuitive path work, because I'm really sure that this video, I want to remind people again, is going to go up into our YouTube channel. And these new people that are going to come watch will most likely want to know where they can find you.
Awesome. Thanks. Yeah, you can find me at www.healthbyintuition.com. And that's my Facebook page. That's my Instagram page. If you follow one, you're pretty much following the other. That wasn't very good marketing of myself on that point. But basically, I try to share, messages that come through. I try to share questions, stories of my own personal growth and, what I'm going through, what I'm learning at the moment. I also have a newsletter. If you want to dive even deeper, you can sign up for that on the web page, which is healthbyintuition.com. My handles on Facebook and Instagram are Health by Intuition. And And I guess I'll link my YouTube channel below also if you want to check out some of my meditations. You can find me on Insight Timer as well, just my name, Char Tamason, and we'll put all these links below, I'm sure. Yeah, so get to know me better if you'd like, follow me. They can book a free consultation, and I'm here. I really want to be of service. This is what I feel like my role is in the world. So I answer questions, whatever questions, send to me in comments and messages, anything. Yeah, I love to be there. I love to learn with people, and I love to help others.
Thanks so much, Char. This is also a reminder that if you get to watch this video once it's uploaded on our YouTube channel, you can leave your comments, you can leave your questions. I'll answer them. I'll let Char know if there's anything that's a question that's particularly meant to be responded by her. The conversation it's just an opening for you guys to continue. Thanks everyone that was able to join, and thank you, Char, for the energy, for the time, the space.
Absolutely. Thank you, Olga, for all of those same things, and thanks to everyone watching.
Thanks again, Char. Thanks everyone for connecting, for watching. I'd like to invite you again to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any of our videos.